you know, it's not that hard to get PC to arrest, especially if you really want to have PC to arrest somebody on a felony. You hook them up, you take them in, you swab them, as opposed to the other process of going to a judge, getting the search warrant.
And really, I think the answer to the question, and the district attorney can chime in here and correct me if he thinks I'm wrong, but to get DNA from someone would require the equivalent of a search warrant. To arrest someone requires the same standard as that search warrant. So really there's no benefit to the police to just do a quick arrest as opposed to doing a quick search warrant. Because again, if you get arrested and your DNA is taken in that case upon arrest, but you're not subsequently convicted, then you could petition to have your DNA removed. So they would actually be better off in the circumstance you described to get just the search warrant, if you will, to gather your DNA, and then we have it legally and can keep it legally at that point. So it would be in the database from that point forward. So there really, I don't think there's the risk that you're talking about, and the safeguard as far as we're concerned really is twofold, and that is one, that if you're not convicted, you can ask that your DNA be expunged. You do have to ask. And the second thing is that there's actually a benefit to having your DNA in the system in that it will help exclude you as a suspect. So again, all the investigatory effort trying to figure out who did this, I mean, we may have to drag you in for an interview to figure out, did you do this? But once we can use the DNA that's already in the database to exclude you, we don't even have to bring you in for an interview. We can exclude you very quickly. So there are balances here on both sides of this.
I think you explained it well. I mean, I think you explained it well. I think the standard for arrest is the exact same standard as it is for a search warrant, or the exact same standard for an arrest warrant, which is probable cause. I guess I would disagree. I think probable cause is a barrier, and the police do have to justify that they have evidence against this person before you can arrest them. If they just arrest you, took your DNA, and did not have probable cause, the courts will suppress all the evidence that you got from that. So that if you arrested someone illegally, you didn't have probable cause, you got their DNA and it matched somewhere, the judge would suppress that evidence. We could not use it in court because it was an illegal arrest. So the standard is exactly the same for an arrest. Now, in terms of would I be more afraid if I'm a criminal? You betcha. If I've done a violent offense, if I've done a brutal rape, if I've done a murder, and I would be afraid of laws like this, because this is going to put more people in the system, and this is more likely we're going to get you. So it is an exceptionally big step. That's why I say, and you heard the numbers, this is a huge step towards we're going to get you, and I'd be afraid if I were a felon.
Other questions?
Yeah, quick question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Commander Lincoln, did you have to add any staff or switch any staff around to review?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Just part of the booking process?
But do they cut off somebody's finger to get the DNA or the toe?
What's the process?
Actually, the process is they take a Q-tip and take a Q-tip and they just rub it inside their cheek, get a buccal cell sample, put that into a tube, and then they'll attach a barcode that ties that into their fingerprint as well as their name in a record, and then that's sent off to CBI for further processing.
Sure. Right, quick question. You mentioned, Director Sloan, the kind of a delay between the arrest and the time it's inputted into the court system. Why that delay? It seems that it would be.
That is actually part of the law. We cannot enter profiles, known profiles from, that are taken from arrestee samples until that arrestee is charged, formally charged.
So if we don't
that is part of the law.
Senator, if we don't charge them for the felony, they can't use it.
Okay, and why is that?
Again, and I should have even thought about that in the answer to Tom Roeder's question. It provides additional protection. You know, when the police arrest you for a felony, it's up to the elected district attorney to determine whether or not we're actually going to file those charges. And so there's a delay to make sure that the DA is willing to file charges. And frankly, the police use the standard of probable cause to determine whether or not to arrest, and the district attorney often uses the standard of clear and convincing evidence, which is higher when determining whether or not to actually follow through and file those charges. So in those circumstances, that DNA would be disposed of and would never end up in the database. But if the DA does file charges, now it's going to be in the database, and if you are not convicted later, then you need to ask that your DNA be extracted from that database. And again, in fairness, we will have already checked every week to see if there are cases where there's DNA from a scene that you match. And so anything you've done in the past, we're probably still going to catch. But once you ask to be removed because you weren't convicted of a crime, you'll be removed, and then all the stuff that's added from that day forward, you won't be matched again. And if you were still out there doing things, we would lose that evidence. Further questions?
Do you have to meet any criteria when you ask to be removed if you're not convicted?
You just have to meet the criteria of actually not being convicted. You have to, and I'm sure they'll develop a form, and you have to affirm that you weren't convicted, and then they'll triple check by letting the district attorney send something that says, no, wait, he was convicted or whatever else, so that you can't just, we won't take your word for it, we will triple check that you were in fact not convicted, but then, at that point your DNA can be removed from the database, or will be removed, I should say, from the database. Thank you so much for coming. We do sort of have to vacate this room, so if you've got individual questions for these folks, we can do it outside probably is the best place. And then two, Sergeant Noblet will help us with a tour of the lab here.
So real quickly, this room is going to be used at 1 o'clock, so people are already coming in to get it set up. So what we're going to do is we've already kind of set up a